Well, among the world leaders you heard there was the French President Emmanuel Macron. His country tonight expected to officially recognize or announce the recognition or confirm the recognition of a Palestinian state. Let's go live to New York then. Bring in SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who's watching all the latest developments around the United Nations General Assembly and the side events as well, Sherwin. So we're about 2 hours away from this two-state conference that we're waiting to see. What is the sentiment on the ground among the various delegations and the diplomats there?
Well, I think the broad takeaway, Tembekile, is that this is not happening in a vacuum. This is coming on the back of the devastation and catastrophe that to this day we see unfolding in the Gaza Strip. The humanitarian emergency that is also unfolding in areas of the West Bank. Israeli settlement expansion, changing the demographics and geography of that region and undercutting what the Secretary General sees as the only viable solution, the only sustainable solution to peace in that region between Israel and the Palestinians. And so you've seen countries like the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Portugal, Australia, Belgium likely to announce today, Luxembourg likely to announce formal recognition of a Palestinian state, Malta, San Marino, and this list could get larger as we get underway here in New York. And so what you are seeing is a frustration from member states that would perhaps not have done this had the consequences of Gaza not unfolded as it had, the consequences of the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. Let's not forget that there are hostages still being held in Gaza. And so you are seeing a momentum shift here from Western countries in the main, joining a lot of the developed and global South in recognizing a Palestinian state. Sentimental as that might be, but also to pressurize Israel here to get back to a constructive negotiation, which has been absent now for a long period of time, a constructive negotiation here between the Palestinians and Israelis that is the only real pathway to sorting out the long-standing disagreements between these two entities. And so you're going to see some pressure now develop here. You're going to see countries affirm this pathway towards a long-term peace. But let's listen to an analyst on this very score. Victor J. Willey is the executive director of the Middle East Institute of Switzerland. This is how he describes what is going to play out today and why it is happening the way it is. Watch.
It is more about politics and less about the sentiment. It is also more, rather strategic in the sense that the governments want to sort of create a new status quo, kind of a new situation in order to pressure Israel in some form of, new round of negotiation. And as I said, Gaza matters, but it is probably more of an amplifier rather than the only motive. I think in the end there is electoral politics. There is also, I think certain countries are more motivated ideologically than politically rather than others. For example, you could, imagine that Ireland, which has its own history with civil war, etc. There is a certain ideological element, maybe in Spain as well. But other countries, I don't know, maybe France, Macron, who is on his way out very soon. He doesn't have much to lose anymore, you can say. So it has nothing to lose if he pushes that issue of recognition. So different motives for different countries.
Tembekile, different motives for different countries there from the analyst, but a very important point, right? In the end, there is electoral politics. And I think what he's saying there is pressure from within states, from within countries that have pressurized their governments to make this move, no less because of the catastrophe that has been unfolding in our eyes, on television screens, multiple reports that there is now a genocide, including from the UN Independent Commission of Inquiry led by Navi Pillay, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the World Global Association of Genocide Scholars. So There has been pressure building here, and this is why you are seeing states come to the table now in a move to further pressurize Israel and the Palestinians to get back to a negotiating platform here that could get us to a viable, sustainable peace in that region.
And Sherwin, whether this apparent shift then in Western policy on the issue of the Palestinians and the Israelis is genuine or moral or driven more by domestic considerations, the United States and Israel have made it very clear, especially in the last 24 hours, that they don't endorse the decisions taken by the French, the Britain or the Brits, etc. And in fact, now we understand that they're not going to attend the conference that's happening this evening. How exactly have they been responding to what we're seeing from these other capitals around the world that intend to recognize a state for the Palestinian people?
Yes, the Israelis and the United States will be boycotting the conference. They boycotted the prelude to this conference, which was the two-state solution conference that came up with what was called and adopted by subsequently by the General Assembly, called the New York Declaration, Tembekile. And the conference hopes to expand on that New York Declaration adopted by the General Assembly earlier this year that endorsed a tangible, time-bound and irreversible steps towards a two-state solution, while also condemning Hamas and urging it to disarm and to surrender. The sentiment from these Western countries that are now recognizing a Palestinian state is that Hamas cannot be part of any future governing structure in a future Palestinian state. I'll tell you what Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has said about this conference. I have a clear message, he says, to those leaders who recognize a Palestinian state. After the horrific massacre of October 7th, you are giving a huge reward to terrorism, is the mantra we are hearing from the Israelis on this. And I have a message for you, says Netanyahu. It will not happen. A Palestinian state will not be established west of the Jordan River. So essentially, west of the Jordan River is a reference to the West Bank. And so he's essentially saying that the occupied Palestinian territory will not be a future Palestinian state as far as Israel is concerned. And so what you will then begin to see, given that sentiment from the Israelis backed by the United States, is that they are going to be increasingly isolated, perhaps akin to what we saw in the Security Council last week, when the United States stood alone in vetoing a resolution that sought, what? Three things: a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, the release and unconditional release of all the hostages, and unfettered humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. The United States vetoed that. It was endorsed by the Israelis, and that is the schism we are going to see on the two-state solution and on anything pertaining to this file moving forward in the short term.
Sherwin Bryce-Pease, thank you very much for that, Sherwin. We'll come back to you in the next hour as well. Let's go back to some pictures we were just showing a short time ago, by the way, in Jerusalem. Let's go back to those pictures, please, because we were showing you, for context, these are pictures out of Jerusalem, families of some of the hostages taken captive by Hamas, as well as other Palestinian armed groups in October 2023, gathered this evening outside the home, I understand, of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Rosh Hashanah Eve. The relatives have set up a no holiday table in front of the home. And just a statement here from the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. They say that we will have no holiday or festival without them. They say the people of Israel will have no recovery. Tonight on Rosh Hashanah Eve, we sit at this empty table outside the Prime Minister's residence with all of Israel standing beside us. So some of the hostages had been in the attempts at a truce between Hamas and Israel been released. Some of them, we understand, have died, and others are still believed to be in Gaza. Whether they're dead or alive remains unknown. As things stand, the Palestinians, that's Hamas, say they're willing to release the hostages, but that will only happen in exchange for a permanent end to the war in Gaza. One of the things they're calling for, and we've seen this happen, by the way, with the exchanges for the hostages in the last few months, this would be the release of Palestinians, including children, who are held in Israeli jails, some of them without charge for years on end. So tonight you're looking at a live shot of Jerusalem. The families of Israeli hostages currently held in Gaza by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups gathered en masse to say they are demanding their release, as has happened over several weekends since October 7th, 2023. We'll keep our eyes on the latest developments out of the Middle East and bring you any reaction should we get it.